The level of his spending and his generosity equates to his level of seriousness and commitment to you. If he's serious, he'll spend the money. If he's serious, he'll take you to Hakkasan. If he's serious, he'll take you to Nobu. If he's serious, he's going to buy you that designer handbag. Hello and welcome to Not Another Money Podcast. Why is it called Not Another Money Podcast, you may be wondering? It's because this is not your typical money show. Get ready for real money conversations and lessons, expert insights from some of our very special guests, and hear some really inspiring stories from everyday people. On this podcast, you're going to learn how to earn more, how to spend less, how to grow the difference, and most importantly, live your best financial life. Welcome back to another episode of Not Another Money Podcast. I'm your host, Tolu, and on this podcast, we have real conversations about money. So the month of February is the month of love, as we all know, and the theme for this episode and the next few episodes in February are all going to be all around the topic of love and money and relationships. And today's episode is called Frugal Love Isn't Cheap. And I really want to start the episode off by clearing something up. This episode is by no way and no means about struggle love. That is not something that I'm trying to promote around here. It's definitely not about settling or lowering your standards in any way, shape, or form. What it is about, though, is removing all those financial pressures that we can feel in relationships so that you are able to focus on the things that really do matter in the long run. So that we're extremely clear and we're all on the same page, let's establish what is frugal versus what is cheap in a relationship so that we make sure we identify the frugal guys from the cheapskates and we avoid the cheapskates at all costs. We don't want to get the two mixed up and we don't want to get them conflated. So when we think of somebody that is cheap, this is somebody that is low effort, avoids generosity at all costs, and they do the bare minimum and they call it value. However, somebody that is frugal in a relationship is intentional, they're thoughtful, and they're values led, and they have a focus on the long-term priorities. So for example, frugal love would say that we're not going to spend money just for the sake of it or just because we've got something to prove. Whereas somebody that is cheap will just be like, listen, I'm not spending no money on you at all. So as you can see, there is a big difference between the two. I really want to debunk this myth that spending a fortune on a date equates to his level of commitment. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions and lies that we've been sold recently. I think people think the level of his spending and his generosity equates to his level of seriousness and commitment to you. If he's serious, he'll spend the money. If he's serious, he'll take you to Hakkasan. If he's serious, he'll take you to Nobu. If he's serious, he's going to buy you that designer handbag. If the relationship is real, it looks very expensive. But I personally think that is not the complete truth. Yes, money can of course create moments and create these amazing memories and experiences. But what money doesn't do is build character. Yes, it can impress you and look amazing on the feed, but what it doesn't do is guarantee their integrity. And it definitely doesn't show you the strength of that person, the character of that person, or how they will show up in times of uncertainty, in times of an emergency, in times of high pressure. I think this is a slightly uncomfortable question, but one that is worth asking yourself. Is this person spending covering something else up, or is it aligned with who that person really is? Because a lot of times it can be quite performative, outward looking, puts on a big show, he has all this grandeur, but there's no substance and no depth behind it. I'm not saying this is the case for every single guy, don't get me wrong and don't get me mistaken. However, a lot of times these performative characters who lead with their wallet and lead with their finances often do this because there isn't much beyond that. How does financial pressure show up in relationships and how does it present itself in relationships? I think oftentimes it doesn't present itself. It doesn't announce itself loudly and come with all the bells and whistles. It shows up very quietly and very subtly without you even noticing it oftentimes. What does the financial pressure look like? It often looks like overspending just to keep up with the Joneses, saying yes to things that you know you cannot afford, feeling really anxious before you even go on that date, and comparing yourself and comparing your relationship to the other relationships that you see on your Instagram, that you see on Snapchat, and that you see across your social media platforms. I think these days love, relationships, and dates can be quite performative. Date nights are now content. I've definitely been guilty of this before myself. Engagements these days are full-on productions, and weddings these days are all about the elaborate, costly aesthetic. Which actually brings me to an example that I love that I came across on my Instagram last year, and I've saved it for a time like this because I knew I was going to reference it in a piece of content because it absolutely blew me away. I remember scrolling through my Instagram and I came across a post by a girl that I follow. Her name is Chrissy King, I think her name is. I'll link her page in the description box below. She shared a reel which went super viral, talking about how she spent £1,500 on her wedding. Yes, not 15,000, not 150,000, 1,500 British pounds was the cost of her whole wedding in London, mind you, last year. And that stopped me in my tracks while I was scrolling because I was like, how is that even possible? I got married 15 years ago and my wedding dress alone almost cost that amount of money. So I had to watch that reel from beginning to end to understand how this lady was able in 2025 to pay for a wedding for £1,500. And when I say the cost of her wedding, I'm not just talking about a quick registry wedding. No, she had the registry. She also had a reception. She had a wedding dress, beautiful wedding dress. She had the wedding decorations. I think the wedding bands were even included. I might be misquoted there, but definitely all the other wedding expenses that you could think of were covered in her £1,500. And I thought it was brilliant. In this day and age where social media, we're seeing weddings that are costing hundreds of thousands of pounds and tens and twenties and £30,000. Seeing a wedding done on such a frugal budget was such a breath of fresh air. She looked stunning, her husband looked stunning. They had the most incredible day. And I actually started following her account because she does a home renovation. So she had recently purchased her own home as well. So she's also a homeowner and her husband is also a homeowner. So you can see that these people are not cheapskates. They're frugal and intentional with how they spend their money, and they spend well on the things that bring them value, and they spend less on the things that are less important to them. And I just thought that that was brilliant. In this day and age where we have social media pressure, the pressure to perform, the pressure to do perfection, the pressure to outdo everybody else that we see on social media, the pressure to fit in, the pressure to look good in front of others, for them to just bypass all of that and say, no, we're having our wedding our way. And I can imagine the pressures that may have come from family and friends and outside voices and outside opinions and suggestions and recommendations. And they went against all of that, all of those external factors that will be pushing against the decision that they were making. And they still made that decision and they had their budget wedding and it looked like they had an amazing day. And fast forward to today, the lady's actually expecting. I'm not sharing her business. She posted it on her social medias, but it just goes to show that life goes on. And imagine how much money she was able to save by having that frugal wedding. To me, this is a perfect example of a couple that are not cheapskates. This is a couple that were in alignment and that were super frugal and are very clear on what they want to do with their money, saving their money on things that mattered less so that they had more money to put towards the things that mattered more. Let's be honest, thinking outside of the box is expensive and difficult in London. Like, you want to be frugal, you want to have frugal dates, but life is expensive. London is expensive. You step out of your house and there's something you need to pay for. But I also think there are also lots of amazing opportunities in London that will not break the bank. You just have to be willing to look at things differently. You do not need to spend a fortune to connect. Despite what you may see all over your Twitter or X feed and platform, if he's not spending £400 on a first date, then you don't want him. If he's not buying you a Coach bag for your second date or for your birthday, then you don't want him. All that content that you see is just noise. In reality, all of those things are not going to deepen and strengthen your connection or help build your relationship. You can have great date nights, you can have great experiences and great adventures together without breaking the bank and without putting financial pressure on yourselves. There's lots you can do. You can visit museums, you can visit art galleries, you can go on walks, you can visit local markets. Parks, we have them galore across London. There's so many free exhibitions and trade shows that you could go to. Even if you go on Eventbrite, there are so many different events that are always popping up, even free ones that you can find on there across London. Even going to the local library. Yes, that might sound like a wild thing to suggest for a date night, but actually you'll be surprised at what you can experience at great libraries. In London particularly, we have some of the best libraries ever. Not to mention also community events, like you can take part in them and experience them together. Just doing things that you don't ordinarily do and trying things that are outside of the box are going to help to strengthen that relationship and give you things to talk about. I actually shared a post around this time last year, which I will link in the show notes, where I shared 30 free date night ideas for you to experience in and around London. So definitely check that out after listening to this podcast, because if you're short on ideas for frugal days out and for frugal date night experiences, this will definitely give you some inspo and some ideas. Just taking a walk out in nature can really do wonders for the mentals and can also do wonders for connecting and actually having real conversations with your partner. Coffee dates, these are so underrated, but I think you can learn a lot from somebody just by sitting down, having conversations with them over a cup of coffee. No pressure, no expectations, no need to perform or feeling like you have to do the most. Having that conversation over coffee and going for a walk seems so basic and it might seem like so cheap, but actually that frugal date night could really be an opportunity for you to really get to know somebody and have an in-depth conversation without putting any pressure on that person's pockets. A simple date does not mean it's a shallow date and does not mean that you are lowering your standards or dropping the bar, because the reality is you can create a connection without overspending and without putting so much pressure on the other person's finances, because not only are they having to spend a fortune on this date night experience, you also then are going to have to spend a lot of money on finding an outfit that looks perfect and making sure you're dressed to the nines and you're on fleek. So there's a pressure from both parts for you to really overperform in those initial dates, when actually you could just not do all of that and do something simple, something frugal, but something that can still be fun and enjoyable for both parties. I really and truly believe that connection is built more so through connection, through shared values, through deep conversations, through consistency, seeing how that person treats others, how they treat their friends, how they treat their family members, how they even treat the waiter in the restaurant that you've gone to or the barista in the coffee shop that you've gone to. These things are a lot more telling than how much money they spend on you. What is their character really like? How are they in pressurized situations? How do they handle stress? How do they show up for you and how do they show up for their family? These are the kind of things we really want to interrogate and pay a closer attention to, and not so much on how much is in their wallet. I think some of the deepest connections can take place when you remove all of the distractions of spending money and actually just sit with each other. I really, really want to be clear here so you do not misunderstand me and do not misquote me. I am not an advocate for struggle love. Like, I'm not trying to say go for the struggle love and just struggle with him and suffer with him and suffer in love. No, no, no. That's not something I want to advocate for whatsoever. And it's not something I would encourage anybody, let alone you guys, my listeners. It's also not about romanticizing lack or going without or struggling or deprivation. I'm not saying that you need to accept less or you need to lower your standards or lower your bar and accept the bare minimum from anybody. And I'm not even saying that finances don't matter and don't worry about how much money he or she earned. But what I am really trying to hammer home is that you should not confuse spending with substance. Don't be disillusioned or be so swept away by how much money someone is lavishing you with that you ignore red flags, that you don't interrogate them, that you don't ask questions, that you don't probe deeper, that it's just all smoke and mirrors and you're just swept away by the experience without actually digging deeper and finding out what's beneath the surface. Money comes and money goes. This person can be up today and down tomorrow. What is their character truly like? If they were to lose it all tomorrow, would they still be a good person? Would they still be kind? Would they still be nice? Even with all the means that they do have, how do they treat you and how do they treat others? Do they lead with their money and are not kind? All of these are things that you really want to question and make sure you are not making decisions just based on the shiny objects, but you're actually making a decision based on how that person aligns with you, how their values align with you, and how much you're in sync in terms of your beliefs and the goals in which you're pursuing together. So, ladies, don't misunderstand me on this episode whatsoever. I really don't want you to come away from this conversation thinking, yeah, Tolly was telling me I must suffer for love. That's definitely not what I'm saying. It's definitely not what I would encourage. But I am really saying do your due diligence and don't be blinded by money and don't be blinded by finances and resources, because yes, money is good, but peace of mind is even better. You want peace of mind. You want somebody that's going to give you peace and not somebody that's going to give you stress for a paycheck. It's not worth the exchange. That value exchange isn't worth it. It might seem it in the short term. However, when we start thinking long term, we start thinking further down the line, we start thinking about marriage and building a future with somebody, you really want to make sure that you have the fundamental foundational things in place, and that is their character, their integrity, how they treat you, how they treat others. If those things are not there and the person has all the money in the world, it means nothing, because all it's going to do is be a breeding ground for misery. And that's not something that you want in your future. At least I hope not anyway. That's not something you want in your future. So yes, if he's going to buy you that designer bag, by all means accept it, live your best life, enjoy. I'm not saying don't collect whatever you need to collect resources wise from your partner. But what I am saying is make sure you question these things. What is his character like? What is her character like? Are they kind? Are they consistent? Are they honest? Are they trustworthy? Are they reliable? Are they dependable? Are they financially responsible? Do they have a plan? Do they have a plan for their future? Do they have a plan for their finances? Is he loyal? Is he respectful? Is he reliable? Is he a protector? Do they show up at times when it's inconvenient to them? Because the reality is that bags can age, but your character does not. Ultimately, I think having frugal love is about having a long-term vision and a long-term plan, and not be swayed by what's happening temporarily in the moment, or not being led astray by shiny objects. I think when it comes to frugal relationships, they tend to focus on alignment over aesthetic, values over validation, so validation from friends, families, others on social media, and peace over performance. So yes, it's all great to get all the accolades and all the likes and comments and engagement on your social media, but you really can't put a price on peace of mind. Couples that are frugal, they think more about what are they building, what are they working towards, what is their future goal, what is their future plan, what are the things that really matter to us as a couple, what is the kind of life that we want to live, what is the kind of children we want to raise, what kind of legacy and future do we want for our family. And most importantly, these frugal couples are not afraid of looking different to others while they're doing it. I think right now, in this day and age and the times that we're living, so many people feel like they are behind. They feel like they're behind in all these milestones that they should have achieved. I really hope that this episode encourages you and reassures you that you do not have to overspend to be loved, and you definitely do not need to overperform to be chosen. You do not need to go broke in order to prove your commitment to any single person, because ultimately frugal love is not cheap, it is just intentional. So you really want to find somebody that matches your level of intentionality, and not somebody that values performance over peace. So if you're in that position now and you're currently dating, or you're engaged, or you're looking to get married at some point in the near future, I really hope that this episode gives you that permission you need to slow it all the way down. Stop with all of that unnecessary pressure and unnecessary performing. Instead, what you want to do is focus on the things that last, the things that are important, the character building that we spoke about earlier. So focus on just being a better person all around, and not just worry about money. Yes, definitely get your money up. That's important too, but do not lead with that. Lead with your character, lead with your integrity, and hopefully you will then be able to find somebody that matches the same character and integrity that you possess, because we all know that in the long run, it is not the price tag that is going to sustain any relationship. What's going to sustain that relationship is the value underneath it. So once again, if you've made it this far in the episode and you haven't given a thumbs up, or you haven't left a comment or subscribed, please do all of the above. Subscribe, comment, like, share it with a friend or family member, or somebody that you think will benefit from this conversation, somebody that needs to understand the importance and value of pursuing frugal love and not leading with perfection, and not leading with your wallet. Definitely share it with them. Hopefully they get a gem or two from this conversation. Definitely subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next few episodes, where we're going to be talking more about the topic of love and money. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, like I said, like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend or family member. Thanks for tuning in for today's episode of Not Another Money podcast, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening. Bye.